Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Also, for discounts at fanduel.com for new accounts, fantasy sports, the promo code is Dwyer777. Well, I made a pre-fight video on this fight. I expressed my opinion that Braehmer would have his hands full early, then would take control of the fight, would pull away. I thought there was a possibility that Braehmer might even get a stoppage in the second half of the fight. As I said in that pre-fight video, I thought Braehmer was just the better fighter, the better technician, that he was going to land the harder punches, he was going to land the more accurate punches, that he was the guy in the ring who knew what he was doing, that Nathan Cleverly was more of an athlete than he was a great fighter, and that Nathan Cleverly had lost a lot of weight, right? He, fought not one fight, folks. He fought multiple fights, 3 fights at cruiserweight, right? He left 175 after getting beaten up by Sergey Kovalev and went to a different division 25 pounds up. And I thought that in the second half of this fight, his body was going to feel the effects of not having that extra weight and that he was going to have stamina problems. So, at the end of the 5th round in this fight, on the live telecast, future Hall of Famer Carl Froch gave his opinion that Braehmer was landing the harder punches, that he was landing the cleaner punches, that he was winning the fight. Right? What could possibly go wrong? Indeed, what could go wrong? At the end of the 6th round, right, CompuBox, counting the punches, gave Braehmer a 200 to 194 edge in total punches landed. It gave him a 172 to 142 edge in power punches landed. Right? A 30 punch margin at the end of 6 rounds. And understand, as I saw it, these 6 rounds were going to be the hard part of the fight for Braehmer. Now, in real time online, it's still up. Bleacher Report had their score doing the score on the fight. Now, while I feel this live scorecard's a little wide, I think it reflects how competitive the fight was, right? How Braehmer was not being outgunned in the fight. In fact, Bleacher Report on its live scorecard had Braehmer up 5 rounds to 1 at the end of 6. Now, none of this is to suggest that Nathan Cleverly did not win the fight. He won the fight fair and square, right? He was the man left standing at the end of the fight. He set a pace, very fast pace, right? Shooting a jab, moving around the ring, that forced Braehmer to actually fight at an accelerated pace. But, and it's sour grapes, right, from this gambler who's poor today as a result of the outcome of this fight, right? Braehmer, in effect, throwing in the towel because of a right arm injury, right? In my opinion, it was clear looking at the fight that Braehmer was the fighter who had the championship skills. I understand that Nathan Cleverly is a 2-time champion. He's certainly the better athlete between the two of them, right? He looked coordinated, he's bigger, he moved better than Braehmer. But as I like to say, this wasn't a decathlon. This was a boxing event. And when it came to boxing, he was badly outgunned. I thought Braehmer routinely was hitting him with very stiff, very hard left counters. I thought Braehmer was able to drop his hands. Now maybe he kept his right a little low because of an injury. But he seemed to be able to drop his hands and at the same time dodge Cleverly's jab, which is not a stiff jab. I want people to look at the films of yesterday's fights and compare and contrast Nathan Cleverly's jab, which is kind of like a placeholder jab, right? He's throwing it, but it's not really busting you up. It's not really snapping your head back that much. Compare that jab with Joseph Parker's jab, right? Parker doesn't quite know what to do with his jab. But Parker's jab is more on par with, let's say, Vladimir Klitschko and Larry Holmes than it is a placeholder jab. Right? So Cleverly, even now, even as I congratulate him for winning the championship, I thought he was getting dismantled. It was interesting because at times you noticed that Braehmer, with his hands down, would literally come up and put a shoulder right on Cleverly. Right? I mean, literally, think about it. The middle of a championship fight. And Braehmer was so sure of the timing of the punches that he was able to kind of like drop his hands a bit and just walk right in. Not even punch his way in. Walk right in and put a shoulder on Cleverly. Now, from time to time, Cleverly did hit Braehmer, right? You saw Braehmer's head getting hit, and Braehmer does move his head back a bit, right? But you got the feeling that even that was by design. That Braehmer figured out. Braehmer's never badly hurt in the fight at all. You got the feeling Braehmer figured out Cleverly's punching power and what Cleverly could do as Braehmer came inside with his hands pretty much down. Right? Braehmer to me seems to be sitting on a left hand. He also seems to be focused on Cleverly's body. He's doing a lot of body work, in my opinion, for the second half of the fight. But, and it is something to consider, right? When you're betting on a guy who's in the second half of his 30s, right? A guy with an older body in a punishing sport where the wear and tear is going to start to show, right? You have to realize that if a guy is going to have a dislocated elbow or a pulled muscle in his lead hand, the hand he's using to jab, it's more likely to happen with older fighters than it is young lions, right? Now, I concede Nathan Cleverly won the fight. As Woody Allen used to say, 80% of life or 90% of life is just showing up, right? He's the fighter in the ring pushing the champ who then goes off track, gets an injury, right? But just from a boxing perspective, right? Who was the boxer rolling with the punches better? I'd say it was Braehmer. Right? Who was the puncher landing not only the higher volume of quality shots, but the harder punches in general? I would say it's Braehmer. Right? I know on the telecast they point out that in the latter part of the 6th round, Braehmer wasn't himself. It looked like Cleverly did better in the half of the round before the fight is stopped. But let's talk about what Cleverly's doing better. Cleverly's the one backing up. There are times in this fight where he's up against the ropes. And to me, he looks as clueless as he did against Tony Bellew in that rematch. Right? Well, Cleverly, last half of the 6th round, Cleverly's moving a bit. and he's hitting Braehmer with counters. But Braehmer doesn't have a cut on him. The counters aren't keeping Braehmer off of him. Right? You know, let's just say, I felt this fight was more about the guy in the lead suffering an injury and being unable to continue than it was the challenger going in the ring and actually winning the title. Right? Cleverly's in line now to fight the winner of Ward Kovalev. I just don't know how Cleverly is going to do better against Kovalev than he did the first time. Right? And that fight was a car crash for him. It ended early. Keep in mind, too, there's a bad dynamic for the rematch because now Kovalev knows he can hurt Cleverly. Right? The first time, you know, the challenger in that one may have wondered, gee, I'm fighting an unbeaten fighter. What really can I do? Now he knows. And Cleverly's game, to me, really hasn't matured. Right? I know Kovalev picked Cleverly to win this fight. When the 6th round ended, how did you have the fight scored? I hope you leave that in the comment section to this video. Right? I would say at the end of 5 rounds, it's clear Braehmer's in the lead, isn't it? Right? If Andre Ward fights Cleverly, is that even a competitive fight? Because understand, Andre Ward is efficient. Right? He's a master boxer. As you look at Cleverly, isn't Cleverly relying on really athleticism and reflexes more than boxing strategy? What I'm going to do to challenge the Cleverly supporters, and I know there are many of you, and I know quietly he's one of the more loved guys in the sport of boxing, right? Charisma is really hard to define. I can just tell you that Nathan Cleverly, a guy who lost some recent fights, had a lot of people rooting for him in this fight, right? Not a lot of outcry on how he got this fight in a division with, quite frankly, more deserving guys for the fight, right? Didn't Fonfara beat him? Aren't there guys like Adonis Stevenson with belts at light heavy? You know, quite frankly, isn't the champ at 168, James DeGale, a more worthy opponent for a title opportunity at 175 than Nathan Cleverly? I understand a lot of people love Cleverly. What I want the Cleverly people to do, after looking at this fight, is to tell us what Cleverly's game plan was. I'll concede he lifts the tempo in the fight. The fight's going along at a much faster pace than I envisioned. I can tell you, from where I sat, Braehmer's strategy was to work Cleverly's body, come in with big left hands, get inside and smother Cleverly. I thought that's what Braehmer's doing. With Cleverly, to me, it seems a bit random, right? He's fighting too aggressively for me to believe that Cleverly had a plan for the second half of the fight, right? While he's fighting aggressively, I never got the feeling he's close to knocking out Braehmer, nor did I believe he was winning the majority of the rounds, right? You have to wonder, you know, I don't believe Cleverly thought he was going to win on the scorecards in Germany. Right? As I said in the pre-fight video, Germans love efficiency. I thought the much more efficient fighter, indeed the one who landed more punches according to CompuBox, was the local fighter, Jürgen Braehmer. Right? So I do hope you leave comments here in the comment section so we can sort through it. Make no mistake, Nathan Cleverly is the champion. He is. I understand too, older fighter with an injury, Who knows how long it's going to take Braehmer to recover, right? Sometimes when you use a jab to set up your dominant hand and you get a nagging injury like a bad elbow or something like that, as anyone who's played tennis knows, that could take a while to recover from. Not only that, if you've had tennis elbow, sometimes that elbow flares up unexpectedly for years. It's never quite the same. So I agree, the injury risk in a rematch between these two is much greater now than it was before Braehmer had this injury. But just on pure boxing, just on the ability to set up and land clean shots, right, to dictate the spacing in the ring, right, to know when the other guy's throwing punches and to either back away or just lean and have the punch graze you. I thought by far the superior fighter was Jürgen Braehmer. Let's shift gears. Let's talk about a second fight. And let me say, sour grapes on my part on the Braehmer-Cleverly fight. I lost that fight. Obviously, I'm seeing it through my lens. Let me know how you saw that fight. Is there anyone out there who feels this was a masterpiece by Cleverly? Right? Let me hear from you. There is a possibility that Cleverly, during the fight, figured out that Braehmer's jab wasn't as stiff as it normally is, and could have tried to force him to use that hand, but I didn't see that. Let's talk about the Joseph Parker fight. Now, Parker fascinates me because this is a guy, to me, with a lot of tools that he's just learning how to use. He has a great jab. It's great. It's fast. As you're watching it in real time, it almost looks like parts of the film have dropped out. 1 minute I see his hand here, the next minute his hand's like this, and the other guy's head snapping back. Right? Parker has a great jab, but he doesn't seem to know how to frame it. Right? Maybe what he needs to do is to find a way to call Vladimir Klitschko, have Klitschko forget that he's actually competing with Parker for a title, and clue Parker in on how to use a great jab to make the fight easier for yourself. Right? Parker is in there shooting a jab, but it's just part of his arsenal. Right? He doesn't keep you at the end of a jab, pulverizing you like Larry Holmes used to, like Vladimir Klitschko has in several fights. He doesn't punish you with the jab, saving his heavy artillery for after he softens you up. Right? With Parker, it's not like the fight starts when you figure out how to get by his jab. Even though he has a great jab, you don't even have to worry about that. He shoots 3 great jabs at you. Then he stops throwing it. Then worse yet. And this is the part of Parker's game, and he dominated Dimintrenko. This is the part of Parker's game that worries me. Right? Parker will come in, throw a few jabs. Parker's light on his feet. Right? He moves well. But you'll notice, as he moves away from the pocket, whereas a Floyd Mayweather, right, I'm just naming a great defensive fighter who's recent, whereas a Floyd Mayweather would move away from the pocket and have a hand up, right, would lean, would, understand that there's a risk that the opponent is waiting to counter him. Right? Joseph Parker, by contrast, at a time when the heavyweight division is flooded with giants, right? When his main opposition would be a giant, right? How tall is Deontay Wilder? How tall is Anthony Joshua? How tall is Vladimir Klitschko? Right? These guys are tall. These guys have reaches. So if I'm in the pocket, even if I have a great jab, and then I decide to glide away from the pocket, don't I have to watch how far I glide away? Because if I move out of the pocket and I'm not far enough away, a guy like Deontay Wilder could, and keep in mind, we're talking about a guy who's, 6'6" and taller. A guy like Deontay Wilder could take a step forward. Let's say that step forward is 2.5 feet. Then can throw a right hand. Let's say that right hand's another 2.5 feet. In other words, he could be 5 feet away from you and quickly reach out and hit you with a power shot. Right? Can he? Isn't that what ring coverage is about? I'll tell you what, if you're really unlucky and you're fighting David Haye, a guy who knows how to really spread his feet and hit you from distance, I believe you could be 6 feet away or more. Right? David Haye knows how to, literally almost run over to you, drop a shoulder, and hit you from long distance. How far away from Nikolai Valuev was Haye when Haye hit Valuev with the bomb that caused Valuev to stagger? How far away from Audley Harrison was Deontay Wilder when he hit Wilder with the right hand that pretty much ended that fight? Well, Joseph Parker, and I know Dimintrenko's tall, but Joseph Parker comes in, and rather than keep you at a distance, understand, one of the differences between veteran fighters and younger guys is veteran fighters know how to maintain spacing in the ring. Right? You're not able to just bum rush Vladimir Klitschko. He's going to keep you outside at the end of a jab. Right? Well, Joseph Parker, interestingly enough, comes in, throws a few jabs, and then he just glides out of the pocket. I mean, like this. Now, I know the guy has reflexes, but wow. And I know the guy's a hunter, right? He's a guy who does unto others and then leaves, right? But at the high end of the sport where he is, folks, we're talking about Joseph Parker now fighting for the heavyweight championship, the crown jewel of the sport, right? Where he is, shouldn't he be a little bit more defensively minded as he moves away from the pocket? Right? I noticed some of the same problems in this fight that I noticed in the Carlos Takam fight, where there are times in the Takam fight where Joseph Parker, comes in the pocket, does unto others, then decides he's just going to split, right? Move away. And as he moves away, he's an athlete. But to me, he's relying a little bit too much on being aware of what's coming back. Right? Some of these opponents could play a chicken and egg game, right? A Deontay Wilder might think to himself, hey, on film, as Joseph Parker backs away, his hands are low. He doesn't have a hand up. Even young Tyson came in with his hands like this, right? So if you threw on him, presumably you might have to, go through a forearm or something. Here, Joseph Parker comes in, he moves his upper body and stuff, but then he throws a few jabs, right? Might throw a right hand, then he just backs away like this. Now, that might work against a guy who doesn't have the reach. That might work in a different era, where the guys aren't all 6'6" and taller. But wow, is that going to work here? Right, so let's just say dominant performance. I mean dominant performance. You saw the hand speed, you saw the punching power, right? You saw the athleticism. Parker's one of the better athletes in boxing. You saw the whole thing in his victory over Alexander Dimintrenko. You did. but you didn't see the great defense. I also believe, given Parker's tools, he should have made this fight a little bit easier for himself. Right? He's landing the jab. Right? Soften Dimintrenko up a bit. I know it's preposterous to say in a fight where he's roughing him up in the very first round. But hey, why take the risk when you have that level of jab? Right? He has one of the best jabs in the division. Right? He has a jab that's really faster, more sudden than even Vladimir Klitschko's jab, which is probably the best jab in the division. Right? It has more power than Kubrat Pulev's jab. Right? Maybe, depends on your taste on who has the best jab in the division. Just know Joseph Parker's on the very short list of great jabs in the division. But he doesn't frame it like Larry Holmes or Vladimir Klitschko or Kubrat Pulev, does he? You just notice it in passing. Right? Let me say this too, and I know it's going to be controversial. Yes, Joseph Parker dominated the fight. No question about it. At the end of the fight, let's face it, you would have rather have been Joseph Parker than Dimintrenko. I'm not here to say Dimintrenko looked good in the fight. I'm not. But the fight does need to be declared a no contest. It does. Marlon Wright, God bless him, the same ref from the Libredo Andrade Lucian Bute fight of a few years ago that was a bit controversial, in my opinion, clearly blows the end of the fight. I agree with Dimintrenko's camp. If you have a knee on the canvas from having been pushed down, boxing simply doesn't allow the guy who pushed you down to the canvas to then hit you in the liver or the kidneys while you have a knee on the canvas. That's not the sport. We can't allow that in the sport. Or we're going to have wrestling matches where a guy wrestles you down to one knee and then tries to hit you while you're on the canvas. Go back and look at the Roy Jones-Montel Griffin fight. That's how Jones lost his O. Guy was on the canvas. Jones hit him while he had a knee on the canvas. Right now here, don't get me wrong. Dimintrenko, to me, one man's opinion, looks like he embellishes it quite a bit. In other words, Dimintrenko has a knee on the canvas, gets hit, and understands this should be a foul. Let me play this up and look like I can't continue. Maybe I get a no contest. I spoil Parker's perfect record. There might be an outcry for a rematch. Maybe I get a second payday. Right? He overdoes it. There's some acting involved at the end. But the sanctioning body has to realize that the end is not a legitimate end. Right? Think about it if the roles were reversed. If Dimintrenko pushed Parker to the canvas and Parker was on one knee on the canvas and then gets hit while he's on the canvas, we wouldn't go for it. We can't go for it here. So, dominant performance by Joseph Parker. In a rematch, I certainly would not be taking Dimintrenko in a rematch. I'd take Joseph Parker in a rematch. He's certainly a world-class heavyweight. The fight should have been a no contest. I hope everyone's honest with themselves about this. The referee, good ref, bad ending. Made a mistake. Right? Should not have counted out Dimintrenko at a minimum. At a minimum. He should have given Dimintrenko an opportunity to get off the canvas, and then he should have given Dimintrenko several minutes for Dimintrenko to recover and to see if he could continue. He didn't do that. He counted out a fighter who had just been fouled. In my opinion, that fight should officially be a no contest. Let me hear from you. Those are my views. right? If you have a different take on the Joseph Parker fight and its ending, I hope you leave that take in the comment section to this video. Thanks for stopping by.